Hello everyone and welcome to another sortie. This is my second sortie on the Finnish server, the second fight of the year for myself, and I'm taking another Fw-190 but this time I'm taking the aircraft without the mid-wing extra 20 millimeters. I typically take those because more is better when it comes to firepower, typically. However, I started thinking about the Sopwith Tripe and an experience that I had with that aircraft in both Rise of Flight and, well, I guess it would just be Rise of Flight. That aircraft is really good, and it can hold its own in a fight against an Albatross, but if you put two guns on it, it becomes almost useless. Now, the difference between 4 guns and 2 guns with the Focke-Wulf 190 is not that dramatic. However, I was interested in seeing how much more capable, if at all, the Focke-Wulf 190 was with the absence of those 2 wing guns, because that weight is in the wings. It provides more stress on the wings. It's also further out from your center line, so it's going to affect your roll rate. It's also going to affect your climb rate and your ability to accelerate. So I just kind of wanted to see if there were opportunities that I would get with 2 wing cannons versus 4. And overall, I'd say I'm pretty impressed with this aircraft with just the 2 wing root mounted 20 millimeter cannons. It is twice the amount of firepower that you get with the 109, so it's still sufficient. And it's also the same amount of cannons you get in a Spitfire, and those are plenty deadly. At the very beginning of this engagement, I'm flying around above cloud level because I want to stay far enough above the clouds that I'm not silhouetting myself to another aircraft that's higher than me, and I want to be able to dive down on anyone who might be flying around cloud level. But there's a fight down on the deck, so after a couple of minutes of flying around up here, I realized that I'm not going to find any bandits because they're all being attracted down to the deck, and so I'm going to go ahead and move down into the space around the cloud layer and try to see if I can't pick anybody off from the top of that fight that's going on the deck. And I'm still cautiously moving down in altitude to make sure that I don't end up underneath somebody accidentally. And my philosophy here is just going to be keeping my speed up and using my airspeed as a safety net. So now I'm beginning to move down aggressively into the cloud layer, keeping my head on a swivel. Lots of firing going on the deck. I don't want to rush into this. I don't want to just dive into this fight because that's a really good way to get killed. A really good way to dive in underneath a bandit. And I don't know what angles everyone's at, so it's going to be difficult for me to line up a shot anyway. I do end up finding a Spitfire, and this is who I was really looking for. It's just someone who's flying relatively straight and level and doesn't know that I'm there, and this is going to be a fairly easy target. I'm going to go ahead and drop in on the 6. Use a lot of smash to close in quickly. We're right now a true pursuit to track, a lead pursuit, or a lag pursuit to get my angle, now a lead pursuit for the shot. And I just misjudged the elevation of the shot, get a couple of hits on the wingtip, but if I'd had my gun sight down a couple of degrees, I would have been able to get some shots in on the fuselage. Perhaps potentially a fatal gun run on that Spitfire. As it is, he gets away. He was later shot down. Interestingly enough, that was a squad mate who shall remain nameless. But I continue out more flat in my escape from this fight because I want to maintain my airspeed. I don't want to zoom climb and make myself vulnerable. Here I find another fight below me, a Spitfire who's firing at somebody, is now breaking off and heading back to their own air area. they're checking 6, but they're checking low 6, they're checking the other side, and now they think that they are clear, and they're going to go ahead and level out. I'm going to settle into their low 6, right in the middle of the blind spot, close in, and take a very easy kill shot. And that's 1 kill so far, and this sortie should have been 2. I'm going to go ahead and break off and go down to the south, more towards friendly territory, and reestablish an altitude, as I am very close to the deck, so I'm going to keep my airspeed up very high. I also need to go back into friendly territory so I can pull my engine throttle down and give my engine a rest. I do end up seeing a pair of bandits, or excuse me, a pair of aircraft fighting just to the north of me as I'm regrouping over friendly territory, so I'm going to go check this out. So they are close to my altitude. It turns out to be a Spitfire with a 109 on his low 6, and he's maneuvering on the 109 because he has more altitude and energy. As you can see, the 109 shooting at him there, but obviously doesn't have the energy to stay with him, and the Spitfire is going to loop up over the top of him to attack, and that's going to give me a perfect opportunity to send him to Valhalla. So salute to you, sir. Not the correct move to make in that situation. And that's why I don't want to zoom climb and loop typically in especially a combat heavy environment, because it makes you so vulnerable to a third party. This is the little bit of damage I did to the first Spitfire. Just a couple of degrees would have put those rounds nicely into a critical point. Moving later on into the sortie, I'm mid-altitude in between the clouds and the ground, not quite as high as I'd like to be, but there's a lot of activity going on, so I'm moving back over a friendly target. I see AAA. I think this is an IL-2, but it turns out to be a Yak. There is another IL-2 behind it. So as I come around on him, I end up seeing the other aircraft, and so I'm going to re-establish a target. I'm going to go ahead and loop up over the top of this IL-2 and set up for an attack. And this is a spot where I'm pretty vulnerable, but this Yak is going to maneuver on me, but he's not going to have the position. And I'm going to get a free shot at this IL-2 who's not maneuvering. Get enough good hits into there that he can't recover from the damage, and he's going to go ahead and ditch. And I'm going to continue out using my airspeed to extend on this Yak. And the Yak is actually going to follow me for some time. And as he does, I'm going to gain distance on him, and then I'm going to use that distance to climb. So the energy advantage that I have over him here is top speed, and all of that top speed I have above him I can use to turn into altitude. So he's going to stay low and try and hold his max speed, and I'm going to try and match his max speed by running maximum throttle and modulating my speed by increasing my attitude of my nose and going into a climb. I don't want to climb too hard because then he'll close, because he does have a better climb rate than I do. But at this extreme amount of energy, I have more energy available that I can use to turn into altitude, and then I can use that altitude to reverse my position and go from defensive to offensive, and that's precisely what I'm going to do here. Now my first attempt, once I get to a point where I think I can attack him, I end up losing sight on him, and so I have to recover. And about right here, I'm going to go ahead and pull the nose up, and I'm going to try to establish a position on his 6 by letting him fly underneath me and coming back down on top of him. But unfortunately, I end up losing him in the transition here. And after losing sight of him, I'm going to go ahead and raise my flaps and extend out away, because I know he's still chasing me. So if he breaks off, he breaks off. But if he's still chasing me, he's going to end up on my 6, so I'm just going to fly straight and level, more or less, putting my nose down a little bit to get more airspeed, and checking my 6 for him. And I end up finding him again when I check on the right side of my 6 here in a second. And there I found him. He's low, slow, and I think I've got enough energy this time, as long as I can keep my eyes on him. And this time I will, because I won't be switching sides. So as I keep my eyes on him, I'm going to come back around and drop in, and now I've gone from defensive to offensive, and this is a pretty high angle shot, and I managed to get a hit. So now visibility is aided by the fact that he is streaming, and I'm going to use my energy to extend back out. I don't need to sit here and get into a knife fight with him. We're well in my territory. He's isolated. I have more speed. He's not getting away from me. I don't have to rush this. So extending away, getting my altitude back, and then coming back around on top of him. He is going to end up causing a higher angle than I would like in my attack, and so I'm going to end up missing. As I dive in, I'm going to stall a little bit. Might not have helped me very much, but he turns back in directly underneath me, and that was a really good maneuver. Probably wasn't quite as aggressive as he should have been, but it was aggressive enough to make me miss. Now I'm going to extend out yet again, and then once I get the distance I need, he's going to take some shots at me, and that's fine, because these are really long shots, and the more he's putting his nose up, the less energy he has, so he's bleeding a lot of energy, which is going to make him a slower and easier target for me. And now I'm going to drop back down in on him, and I'm going to swing out to the left to get outside of his turn to lower my angles, and then that's going to prompt him to turn back to the left, and that's going to give me a nice easy intercept and a nice broad shot at his aircraft. I get hits, he loses control of the plane, tries to bail out, but unfortunately doesn't have enough altitude. And that's kill number 4 for this sortie. Now going into sortie number 2, I have the same loadout, same plane, and same philosophy. I'm not going to be taking off from an aircraft or an airfield as far away as the last one. So I come into the combat area with a little bit less altitude, but I think a sufficient amount of altitude for what I'm trying to do. So I'm searching for bandits at or below my altitude, and especially above my altitude, because I don't want to come into this at a disadvantage. And there's, according to the map, quite a few enemy aircraft in the area, and as we can see, there's lots of flak indicating that there are people on the ground attacking our ground targets. So I'm going to level out, come out of my climb, and try and get as much airspeed as I can. I'm in combat mode power here for the 30-minute combat mode, and I'm just trying to take stock of the situation. I don't want to rush into anything. I see this is, I think, a 109, but I end up seeing a pair of aircraft over here holding hands, and I'm going to maneuver to try and set myself up on for an attack on them. And there they are. I see flak. It could be flak from their forward targets. It could be a flak from our targets. I'm not really sure at this point, but now I know that this is a friendly being attacked by a Spitfire. So I'm going to go try to help him out. And I really don't like doing this because, especially when you have someone who's trying to turn, or excuse me, this is a lag, an LA5. When you have someone in a Focke-Wulf trying to turn against a fighter that is much more capable in turning, it makes injecting yourself into the fight and getting good hits much harder. Fortunately for me, I come into this just at a spot where the 190 is swinging the LA5 over the top, so it's a little bit easier for me to get a shot. If I'd pulled the trigger a little bit earlier, I probably would have got better hits on him. As it is, I hit the tail of his plane, and I'm not going to saddle up on him because this is a hot zone, and I'm going to try and see if I can't inject myself back into this fight again a little bit later with an easy shot. That Focke-Wulf 190s could just hit the deck and go south, and I would have a much easier time clearing his 6, but as it is, he is deciding to maneuver, so I don't want to make the same mistake. And now he's picked up a second LA5, which is precisely why I didn't want to saddle up on the first guy. And so I'm going to take the higher of the two here because he's the greater threat. I missed the first shot, but this allows me to saddle up on him, and I get good hits here, get a pilot kill, and that's one dealt with. However, I end up picking up a Spitfire, so I'm going to extend away from this guy. I'm not going to maneuver hard. I'm going to use my speed to extend, get out of his weapon zone, get out of his range, and I think that if I turn left, I will be going towards friendly territory, but I'd gotten myself mixed up in this kerfluffle, and I'm turning north into enemy territory, and I'm only just now starting to realize that it was a major mistake. I need to continue my turn to the left and go towards friendly territory. So I'm going to do that in a nice, easy, long left-hand turn because I don't want to give this guy too much space to cut my corner and use that to gain ground on me. I've ended up losing him anyway. He is still chasing me, but I can't see it. I figure that if I can't really see him, he's far enough away from me, it doesn't have enough energy to really close on me, so I figure why not try and help this Focke-Wulf out a little bit. I do end up getting a hit on the Spitfire. Interestingly enough, was just like machine guns on his wingtip. I didn't even see the hit, but I did get a hit on his right wingtip, and it was enough damage that later when he put it in, I don't know if it was a maneuver kill or what, but I ended up getting credit for killing him as well. So I got 3 kills on the sortie, but really only 2. This other Spitfire is still following me, so I'm going to hit the deck and continue out to the south near our targets that I need to defend. I see this guy. I think I have enough room between me and the Spit to attack him, but there was the other Spitfire there, and I ended up losing him anyway. So I'm going to move back to the south and continue to extend. A lot of people might consider this kind of playstyle, I don't know, boring, I guess. It's a lot more entertaining to turn fight with people, but this is the way you fight effectively in a Fw-190 and even P-51s. You have to use discretion in getting into and out of fights and use speed to close in and get the right angle that you want on your opponent and then take them out in a single pass. So after extending towards friendly territory, I'm going to go ahead and start climbing. I'm doing the same thing to the Spitfire that I did to the Yak earlier. However, I end up turning around and trying to come back at this guy a little bit too early, and he ends up having the energy to maneuver inside of my turn radius, and so I completely botched that one. However, after reaffirming to him that I have more energy and that we are over my territory, he's going to go ahead and break off, and I end up trying to come back around and maybe chase him back into their territory, trying to see if I can't get an easy kill out of that. But I end up finding another enemy aircraft a little bit above me and heading south into our territory, so I'm going to go ahead and pick him up instead. And as I turn to make an attack on this guy, the Spitfire, unbeknownst to me, is turning around and re-engaging me. And this is where I end up making a costly mistake, an almost fatal mistake. I should have had a kill here with this, turns out to be a Yak, but I made a mistake that is pretty common in that I go for the shot instead of the angle. And in every merge, you have two options. You can either set yourself up for a shot, as I did here, high angle shot, ended up getting a hit, but if instead of taking the shot, I had continued to maneuver for an intercept point, I'd have had a much closer shot here. As it is, I'm lobbing bullets over the top of him, and that Spitfire has managed to pick up my 6 and put some 303 rounds into my wings. However, nothing major. I still have energy on him. I'm going to keep my nose low and just get the hell out of here. There's just too much going on. I'm looking for ways to re-engage, but at this point, that's a losing fight, and I don't want to press my luck. So keeping my nose low, going south, further into my own territory, and away from this combat area. The Spitfire will end up breaking off of me, and another 109 is going to end up in that fight, but I attempt to come back around to join that fight, but that 109 gets spanked and there's too many enemies, so I just bailed out of that fight and gained some altitude and came back, finding a Spitfire again, but this one's being attacked by a Bf-110 that I had seen just a little bit earlier. So the Bf-110 is going to make a pass at him. I don't know if he hit him or not, but I'm expecting the Spitfire to engage the 110, and if he does, I'll attack him, but he goes defensive. I wasn't really quite expecting it. Didn't get my nose out far enough in front of him. Did get, I think, a small hit, maybe machine guns on him, but nothing major. I'm not going to commit to it. I'm going to blow through and extend out as usual, keeping my speed up. Looking over my shoulder for him, I see him cross the river, so I'm going to come back around and try to set myself up for an attack, but I see the shadow of the Bf-110, so I'm going to end up checking his 6, and it turns out that the Spitfire is going to be going for him, and so I swing around to the left side of the Spitfire, opposite of the 110, to try and set myself up for an attack on him, and the Spitfire turns around and tries to engage me, which is going to give the Bf-110 the opportunity. So as the Bf-110 comes around on the Spitfire engaging me, I'm going to go ahead and bring him to the left so that the 110 has a better angle on him. And there we see the Bf-110 saddling up into a nice position. And now the Spitfire is going to maneuver against the 110, but he, for whatever reason, can't seem to outturn him. I'm going to see an opportunity to drop in and get a shot here, but the Bf-110 has got a good enough position and is so close that I decide against it because there's a collision hazard there. And the 110 seems to have everything under control, so I don't need to inject myself in that anyway. And the 110 does get the kill. I give him a congratulations and move on later, reestablishing my position over our targets. Here we are going into the last segment of this second fight. As we can see, back over enemy territory at about mid-altitude. I think there's a pattern being developed here. There are enemy aircraft in the area. I don't know where they're at the moment. As you can see on the icons, very active combat area, and there goes the pumpkin chucker trying to take my head off completely unseen. He came from about my 1 o'clock low, blew through. I keep my nose low and try to extend as much as I possibly can. And I'm moving back towards the south, trying to drive deeper into friendly territory, looking for friends to help me out here. There are a lot of other aircraft in the area, and I don't want to get too caught up in this one fight. As we can see, there's another enemy plane further off on my 6, so this is not a 1v1 situation. I'm diving down, seeing this other aircraft coming at me, looking to see if it's a bandit. It turns out to be a friendly. I'm looking for an opportunity to come back and clear his 6. Hopefully the P-39 that's chasing me will go after him, but because I put my nose back up, I tipped my hand a little bit, and instead of going for the other 190, he continues to press on for me. So I'm going to continue to drag him down and away from the rest of this fight. If I can get him into a one-on-one position where he's a little bit more isolated, I can do the exact same thing that I did to the Yak earlier. And he seems to be biting. This is something I want to talk about right now. If you're in a slower fighter and you find yourself having to put your nose down to keep up with an enemy that is flying and climbing further into their own territory, for the love of God, give it up. He's still back there, still low. I'm still waiting for him to bleed off some of his energy from that dive. And then I'm going to put my nose slightly up and begin to climb. And as I climb, he's going to remain nose low near the deck and come underneath me, set me up for a nice position where I can do the exact same thing as the Yak. As it turns out, he ends up breaking away from me. I'm not sure if he thought there was another a 109 or a 190 on his tail. But here, very shortly, he brakes hard and gives me the opportunity to come back around, which I promptly take. I've lost him here, so I think he's broken off. I end up picking up his shadow on the ground, and then I triangulate his position based on that and come back around to him. Still looking for him. There he is. Then he breaks off, goes 360 degrees and comes back around. And I'm still trying to look for, what he might have been breaking off against, whether or not there might be a second bandit in the area. But now that I see that I'm clear and this is in fact a 1v1 and I do have a energy advantage on him, and we are quite a ways away from the other targets where friendlies of his would be, I go ahead and make the decision to drop in, and I'm going to dump all of my altitude for level energy here so I can close in as fast as possible. And as I do that, he picks me up and breaks into me. And now I'm going to go underneath his nose and cross, taking away any head-on shot that he has. I do not want to give him a head-on shot. So after the merge, I'm going to blow through, go into the vertical. I'm not going to perch and hang myself there. I'm going to end my vertical at a point where I have enough energy to remain at a high enough speed that he can't easily track me as he comes nose up over the top in this loop. And that maneuver is going to drain enough energy out of him that I'm going to be able to establish an energy dominant position here and roll in for a shot. There, I get a nice profile picture and a nice high angle shot, and come back around. He's not maneuvering towards me. I think he's lost where I am in that maneuver, so I'm going to drop back down into a 6 and make another pass. And this is where I make a mistake. The second one, this one quite a bit more consequential than the first, as this is a 37mm cannon being lobbed in my general direction. Never, ever overshoot your opponent into their gun sight. That was a bit of a scary moment for me, because it doesn't matter how bad of a shot your opponent is. It only takes one to change your life. So it's kind of like the lottery in that respect. But as he takes that shot, he loses a lot of energy, tries to put his gear down to ditch it, but he stalled right before he got to the ground and ended up going boom. So a full third of the kills that I got in these two engagements were from people who were chasing a fight that they couldn't win. And the other third, or another third, came from people who were too nose down or too target fixated in the fight that they were fighting to see third parties coming into that fight and attacking them. That would be the second Spitfire I shot down and the LA-5. And then, well, you have someone who was low SA, the first Spitfire that I shot down, the first Spitfire that I attacked, and also a ground attacker that was not maneuvering in an effective manner to avoid being attacked by a fighter. Fortunately, I got away with making a couple of very egregious mistakes, and come home to land my wounded bird and fight another day. Thank you for watching this video, and if you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Go ahead and hit subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll see you guys in the air.